to Bloody Good Horror, covering the best and worst of the horror genre since Halloween 2007. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting, stupendous episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be discussing Pet Sematary, which ironically Joe spelled correctly in his initial email, which I really enjoyed. It's a fun moment.
I spelled it the way I think it should be spelled.
I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me tonight, first up from Hotlanta, Georgia, rocking the ringer tee tonight, which I really like. Please welcome Cece to the show. Oh,
thank you.
Japanese
Hi.
Batman, I like it.
I know.
Very nice.
I play for the Batman team.
Next up on the show, coming to us from Chicago, Illinois, he drinks beer, probably a lot more of it lately since he has an infant child at home. Please welcome Joe to the show.
That's right. Yes, constantly. Although I am in my final week of paternity leave, and my liver and my sleep pattern is getting terrified.
You know what the nice thing about going back to work sucks, but I feel like you get at least a week where you just get a pass on literally anything because everybody just looks at you like, oh, are you okay?
Oh, I have not checked email in 6 weeks. Like, I don't even know where to begin. So
And you can just fall asleep at your desk and people are like, oh, he has a baby.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a get out of jail free card. And also, government law, this is in every state, you cannot be laid off for 3 months after going on paternity leave. Yeah.
Oh.
If you work at a place for a year, yeah. So
I'm guessing
you're pretty much untouchable.
Listen, I'm
You're
guessing
saying that is in every state or not? It's a
No, it's nationwide. Like I believe it's a.
Don't
it's
worry,
a
I'm
government.
sure Trump will get rid of that any day now. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. Last up tonight, joining us from Manhattan, New York City. He's got like 12 babies. It's like Bebe's kids up in here. Please welcome John Schnorr to the show.
Didn't Bebe only have 2 kids?
No, I thought he had
remember.
12.
He had none. He dated a woman who had like
Wow.
8 of them.
Yet they were in the title. They were his kids. That's a little confusing. Do you see why I was confused?
Well, I believe at the end they ended up getting married, or
Oh, good for
they
them.
don't die; they multiply.
Good for them.
What a weird thing, right? Like, we don't drop dead. Don't worry.
Yeah,
We multiply.
that is weird. Pet Sematary. It's a remake, John. You know what happened? You know what happened, John? Somebody remade it a couple years ago, and then literally tripped into an enormous pile of filthy cash money. And then everybody with a Stephen King license was suddenly like, "Oh snap! We need to get someone to remake this right now."
I mean, I think that's pretry accurate. Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
probably
exact- the
literally,
exact outcome.
literally
boardroom.
exactly what happened. So here we are, Pet Sematary, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. You got any good pet stories, John?
Pet stories.
Or pets? Favorite childhood pet?
So the craziest pet that I had growing up, and I'm sure I've talked about this on the show at some point. We had all right. So I had a Jack Russell Terrier. Y'all know about Jack Russell Terriers?
They're crazy.
The lead singer of Great White.
They're very
Yes.
they're very hyper.
What Joe said. They're extremely hyper. Well, everyone sees the one that was on Frasier. Woody? No. What was his? I know y'all know the name.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
All right.
Niles, I think.
Eddie. No, it was Eddie. I'm almost positive. But everyone sees that dog and is like, oh, Jack Russell, that must be a great dog. No, most of them are just as smart, but neurotic as all get out. So we had a really crazy one. But while I was about to tell the story about the dog, I remembered I have an excellent, not just pet story, but a pet death and resurrection story. So should we start there?
Well, I think so. Yeah.
There's a chance I told this on the show at some point. So, if I have, stop me and I'll try to keep it brief because I don't want to upset Joe. But essentially, the story is that my dad was home napping because he used to go into work super early and then he would come home, he'd take a nap during the day, and then he would go back to work. He was a baker. So he was home napping during the day and the cat was like in bed with him. We had a cat, black cat with like some other colors, but it was mostly black. And he, cat's in bed, napping with him, whatever. He gets up, he goes to work, comes home. The neighbor comes over and is like, "Hey, Doug, you better go out in the street because I think you might have a problem." Goes
Oh,
out.
dude, that's exactly what happens in this movie.
There is a black cat in the street. It was the same situation. I mean, because you never find it. Well, maybe you do find your own sometimes, but I think our neighbor wasn't working and she was just home. So my dad goes. He like gets a bag. He just puts the cat into the bag. Goes out to the backyard, digs a hole, puts the cat in the hole.
I love where this is going.
Yeah.
And so he goes back. He goes back in the house, and all of us were in college at this point. Like, so it wasn't like really a thing. Like the kids were going to be upset or anything. He was just like, it was a cat. It was probably 14, 15 years old, and it was like, all right, the cat's gone. This sucks. Goes back into the house. Goes up to his bedroom. Is getting out of his work clothes. Looks under the bed. Our cat is still asleep on the bed.
Not dead.
Wow.
Hair's all
that cat-
matted.
Yeah.
Turns out
No.
John Schnars grew up on a Micmac Indian burial ground. Weird story.
Yeah. The cat was very much alive. And like the conclusion of the story is that like a week later, someone came to my parents' house from like 3 doors down. I was like, "Hey, friend,
Thanks
Heard-
for yeah.
Here's
yeah,
the
heard
only
you might have found our cat."
here's the only thing I want to know. Did
Yeah.
your dad dig it up and give it back to them?
Jeez.
Really good question. I don't know. I'll have to ask him.
Did your dad desecrate that cat grave?
No,
Which-
I'm
Which-
assuming no.
Which
Like,
he
would
created.
you ask for the cat's body back?
I don't know,
No.
cat people are weird. Like,
I think
feel
I
like,
might feel. I think I might feel weird about it. My pet being in someone else's yard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I never-
I would feel weird about
Like,
it.
I never got to say goodbye.
My dad did not feel weird.
Yeah.
Maybe they felt weird. I don't know.
Did they
And
come
maybe-
into your yard like randomly just to like visit the cat every once in a while?
No, Jesus, no, they're not. I don't know if they're that.
Every
kind of
year,
cat.
you just stare at the back window and they're like laying a wreath in the middle of your yard.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna do you a solid. I'm gonna text my mom while we're doing the show because she will 100% respond, and I'll see if I can get resolution on this anecdote for you.
All right, good. Can't wait.
I don't know. What about you, Cece? Any good pet stories? And dead cicadas don't count.
I was trying to think if I had any good, like, kind of creepy stories. I mean, my parents tried to tell me that, I mean, I grew up on basically a farm, so like we had all kinds of animals, and a lot of our neighbors' animals just lived at our house. But we got a husky, and apparently the husky ate our neighbor's prize chickens. So
Oh, yeah, they'll do that.
yeah, I mean, they're dogs. Like, keep your prize chickens put up.
I mean,
guess
they're
but,
also dogs that are like this far away from being wolves.
yeah, and so our neighbor.
They're also the brand of pants I had to wear as a child.
But my neighbor poisoned him because he killed his chickens. So my dad, instead of telling us that he was dead, told us that he ran away, and I like
What?
cried for like
Oh,
almost a whole year
wait a
before
minute.
finally my grandmother slipped up and told me that he was buried at her house because my dad didn't want to bury him at our house.
What kind of Hatfield and McCoy's ass shit is
Seriously.
that?
Yeah. I mean, I
Wait.
told you I grew up on basically a farm.
Holy
Would you have
crap.
preferred that your father resurrected the dog and like brought it back so that you didn't have to feel that sadness? Or
Like, We
I
kind
mean,
of birdied it like in the living room, just like had it on like strings. Like,
no, I mean, I would have rather him told me at the time,
Oh my
but
God,
I don't know.
dude.
We had some crazy we had some crazy animals in general. Like we also had a cat who got stuck up in not in the engine block, but like up so my dad drove a Ford F-350, so like one of the really big huge trucks, and underneath the bumper it kind of curves up, and the cat got stuck up in there and rode from our house in Georgia all the way to Tennessee, and we couldn't figure out how our cat got to Tennessee.
it's amazing.
So yeah,
Man, I really should have gone first because none of my stories are that good.
All right, hold on. My mom just texted me back. She says they didn't want it. In fact, she didn't like the cat. I still work with her. So apparently she works
Oh,
with my
man.
mom too, which is great.
I had a friend of mine, like his mom really wanted a cat. Dad hated cats, and of course the mom got her way, so they got a cat. And his thing was always like, anytime the cat pissed him off, he would go back. He would go out in the backyard and pull a shovel out of the shed and lean it up against the shed. And his whole thing was like, if it pissed him off in like concurrent days, then he would like start digging a hole. Like basically, basically it was like the warning. Never got that far.
Grounds for a divorce.
This same
That's pretty
cat,
gruesome.
Yeah.
this same cat years later, like I'm allergic to cats, so like I never had them growing up. I always found them bizarre and confusing, and like if it's better now, but when I was a kid, if I was in a house with a cat, like my throat would literally close off. So like when I think of cats, I'm just viscerally like disgusted, just because associate them with my body trying to murder me. But so like I didn't get any of this, but like this cat in later years would, like if my friend left his bedroom door open, the thing would just go piss all over his bed, like every time.
Mm.
Did like he could clean his sheets up, and then leave his door open 4 hours later, and it would do the same thing.
What a fun pet.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
so
That's
cool.
the best.
I mean, Joe, you're the funniest one here because you spent probably, I mean, we've been doing this show for 11 years now, almost 12. You
Mm.
spent 9 of them basically anytime an animal was in a movie talking about how much you hated animals and you didn't care if
Yeah.
they died, and then decided you wanted to get a
You talk
dog.
about other stuff too. It wasn't
That-
just
well,
that.
it was mo-
Literally nothing but for
It
9
was
years.
mostly hating animals, and then he decides he's gonna get a dog, and 2 weeks later he's like French kissing it on stream and like dressing it in
Well,
pirate outfits.
I don't hate animals. I just like I never had like an attachment to one. Like growing up, we had gerbils, and like you don't get attached to gerbils.
No,
So you know you don't get attached to them. You just shove them up your butt, right?
Exactly.
no, you
I mean, I was
stick them
like,
in a you
first
stick it
grade.
you stick them in a shoebox and you blow weed smoke in there and see what happens.
I
So
did.
graphic.
I was in, I think, kindergarten, and me and my brother both had a gerbil. And I remember, I don't know why, but like I wanted to surprise him with his gerbil, so I put it in my hand and then like put it around my back, and I went into his room to like surprise him, like, oh, guess what I have? I didn't realize at the time the gerbil started like gnawing on my shirt. So when I pulled it to like go and show him, I ripped its teeth out. So I just pulled out this gerbil with blood running down my hands.
Oh my god, dude.
In like I was in preschool. Like it
Joe,
was the most
I'm not.
traumatic experience.
mean-
I don't know. I had to stop listening, so I hope that we're not talking about that any further.
Joe, that's pretty metal.
Oh, it was a traumatic experience.
That's like that's almost Norwegian, true Norwegian
our
death metal.
like entire house just like burst into lunacy. Like it's like the gerbil's still alive, so it's like flopping around like there's blood on the floor. My brother's crying because his gerbil's dying. I'm freaking out because I think I killed it. My parents are trying to console us, like, and this was all at like 9 o'clock when we were supposed to be going to bed.
I would be so pissed off about the amount of blood that was all over that had to be cleaned up. Oh my god. That
But
is
anyway, yeah,
terrible.
my dog is sent from heaven above, and it's
Good lord, dude. We had like a dog when I was a little kid, but died kind of before I really, was old enough to remember it. And then we went through a succession of like, when you're younger, you go through like little small pets, like Joe, you're talking about like gerbils or whatever. So
Yeah.
I really wanted a turtle.
oh yeah.
But the worst thing about the turtle was that you had to like you couldn't filter a turtle cage because its shit was like huge, and so
Oh, it's disgusting. I had a turtle for 16 years.
yeah, like once a month or every. Like I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't do this as often as I was supposed to, but you had to siphon all the water out.
Yeah, yeah.
Dump it down the toilet and refill it with water. It was disgusting.
yeah, I did that for 16 years.
Yeah, it's awful. But the coolest thing was, so it was little turtles, like I don't know, probably not much bigger than like your fist. But about once a month, you would feed it a bag full of goldfish. Like, so it ate normal turtle food most of the time, but then once a month, you dump like 20 goldfish in the tank. And Mark and I would just sit there and watch because it would eat all of them in like 90 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
and it would go berserk, water sloshing everywhere. The goldfish are running from their impending doom. And like the thing would like snap at the goldfish and just tear them in half. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, John.
Yeah.
Nature.
Yeah, I would do the same. That's what when I would go on vacation, I would buy like 3 dozen goldfish and just put it in the tank and like
And go batshit. It's
Yeah.
great.
good times.
Long
And
story
then, yeah,
short, I was
had
a
it for. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
long story short, I was a terrible turtle owner, so we actually donated it to like a preschool.
Well, that's what. Yeah, I had it for 16 years. Leslie hated it because like it's not a fun pet. Like it just sits in there.
It's just
so when
it's
we
just
moved to
maintenance.
Chicago, we just posted on Craigslist and someone took it, and I did not shed a tear.
It's just maintenance. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think the moral of the story is we are all great pet owners, and our pets are very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just spent a whole bunch of money on Brody last night being a great pet parent because we went to the emergency room all evening.
Oh,
Oh God, why?
Oh.
I think she hurt her back. Like I was worried she'd eaten something, but after a bunch of X-rays, they're like, no, that's fine. So, yeah, but she like is having trouble walking. So
is there
Oh.
any
We're-
way? Is there any way this dog could have eaten an entire jar full of cicada skins?
no, but remember last year I also had to get X-rays because she ate an entire chipmunk. So
Oh, I do remember this. Yeah.
I was thinking that that's what had happened again, but no, I think it's her back.
Isn't that just we were joking? We were joking about Circle of Life. Is it like aren't dogs supposed to eat chipmunks? Like,
No, yeah, totally. But she didn't like rip it apart. She swallowed it whole.
Like,
Mm.
like
And then
a-
she started like coughing, and then she was getting fluid in her lungs because she wasn't
Yes,
digesting it fast enough.
Yeah.
Do you got something in your throat? Oh no, it's just a whole chipmunk.
It's just a live chipmunk living down there.
like an
Just
anaconda.
crawling to get out.
All right,
yeah.
Joe.
Well, this has been fun.
Pets.
Joe, you know what helps with the frustration of being a pet owner?
Beer, alcohol.
Drinking. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know me so well, Joe. You know my segues. Every week here in the show, you bring us a beer that pairs well with that week's movie. So tonight's topic, Pet Sematary. Joe, please bring us this week's beer. Beer guts.
Oh, beer guts. It's that time of week again. Pet Cemetery. I think everybody knows the plot of this. Your dog drops dead. You go to the pet cemetery. You bury it. It comes back. Your kids play with it. In honor of that, I picked a beer, a rarity for me, because this one is all the way over from Ellen. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Ellen, Scotland,
Oh.
which is a part of the UK, if I do understand. This is from the good folks at Brewdog, which makes sense for this movie. And this beer is their Elvis Juice, which is an American IPA that they created for us. Difference between this and kind of traditional IPAs is they actually use grapefruit, like the rind or peel in this, which if you've heard me talk about IPAs before, they usually have like a very citrusy flavor to it, or even like a almost like grapefruit or
So that's-
lemony.
So that's one thing grapefruit is good for?
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Grapefruit is delicious. We
No.
need to go down this road
Maybe
right
if you're a
now.
psychopath, sure.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
like 19 years old and just giving up on life.
Right.
I feel like grapefruit, I don't know why, but I feel like grapefruit is the most racist like fruit out there. Like I feel like racists love grapefruit. Like
Huh. You know,
That,
I'm not following, but I'm interested in your theory. I'd like to hear more.
like if you
All right.
picture like a Klansman eating breakfast in the morning and they're eating fruit, what fruit would it would be grapefruit. Like
It is the
they would-
official. It is the
Oh,
official fruit
Christ.
of Duke University. Oddly enough.
Exactly. Grapefruit is the official fruit of racists. around
Let's
America.
move on to the beer, for the love of God.
Prove me wrong, John. Anywho,
Weird how John wants to change the subject now.
So they use the grapefruit peel in this. Very good. This beer, super hoppy, but not like overly bitter. Comes in at about 6.5% alcohol, so you can have a bunch of these and still be fine. You can still go out and do whatever you're gonna do for the day. Brewdog is a really interesting brewery. I don't know if you guys have I forget the channel. It's like Esquire. The two guys that started this actually had like their own show on there where they would travel around mostly America and partner up with like different breweries and brew beers in like weird different ways. So the guys are super interesting. Like I want to hang out with them. And they're opening up a hotel in Ohio, I believe, where they've already got like a brew pub going and stuff. So I'm sure if you've seen them in the store, they distribute throughout all of North America. So I'm sure you've seen their stuff. Definitely check it out. I usually venture away from beers from overseas just because like the shipping process and everything, like you kind of lose some of that flavor and things get a little funky, but I've never had a problem with their stuff. So I definitely recommend it. Brewdog.com is their website, and there you go.
Thank you for that, Joe.
Thank you.
You never miss a week with that, Joe.
Hey,
Unless you actually miss a week, in which case you're not.
unless I'm
It
not
doesn't
here.
happen.
Yeah, there's always that.
Things happen, It's life.
Hey,
All right,
I got a
guys.
baby.
It is time. Let's take a break and discuss Pet Cemetery.
This is it, Senator. Your big break in TV. From the prime time, bitch.
John, I'm gonna need to get an over/under on your average weekly grapefruit consumption before we move ahead.
It's very seasonal, so like
Yeah, that's
I haven't
fair.
had one in I don't know, like a couple months, but
Yeah.
if I can get a good grapefruit, whew,
Oh, search
wanna
the
work.
dark web. Search the dark web. I'm sure there are racists throughout North America
It's-
talking about where to get the best grapefruit.
It's code. It's like, boy, I sure do love grapefruit and wish I could find
Yeah.
other like-minded people who also enjoy grapefruit.
Hi.
Cece, come
Dot,
on,
dot,
you throw
dot,
me a
dot.
bone here. Like, do you eat the grapefruit or not? eat the
No,
grapefruit?
I'm
Hey!
sorry.
Hey,
Oh,
Bird, we gonna go
Jesus.
out and be all ignorant? Yeah, but first, let's eat our grapefruit. It fuels my hatred for people.
With vitamin C.
I mean, I don't understand where the racist loving grapefruit comes from, but no, I
mean-
don't like grapefruit.
I mean-
Don't try to think.
I
too
mean,
hard
I
about
think
it.
it.
That's all
I
I'll
think
say.
it came from Joe drinking tequila tonight. To be honest with you.
Probably.
Yeah. He hasn't had to interact with people that much over the last couple weeks. It's
Yeah.
it's getting dark.
It's
He's-
it's the tequila. It's this local place. It's Tequila Mockingbird. They just opened up near me.
We might just need to mute Joe. You can do that like from remotely, right, Eric?
I'm usually good with a nice pun, but it seems a little much.
That's classic. John, you want to synopsize this thing or what?
John, you probably read To Kill a Mockingbird in school. You probably actually read it, is what I meant to say, instead of did like
Yeah.
me and just pretended to.
It's a great book.
I'll believe
I mean,
you.
you guys read books now. Like, go read it. It's like worth your time.
I mean,
Okay,
I
dude.
thought it was a good book.
John,
Listen
I'm
to
not in.
John trying to backtrack over like the inequality thing, like
Schnars.
the whole grapefruit. Like I love To Kill a Mockingbird.
Schnars,
It's a book about racism, Joe. Come on. I thought you'd
Schnars, I
be all about it.
graduated. I graduated 7th grade like 23 years ago. Okay, I'm not going back to read To Kill a Mockingbird now. All right.
All right.
You read it though, and you bring us words because that's what you do. So please bring
Mhm.
us the word of the day. That's why you're here, to do stuff like that, and then I don't have to. You and CC.
Man, I might take up a new sort of, conquest here to get you to read To Kill a Mockingbird. It's like classic literature. All right, in any event,
Good luck.
today's word, Eric, is loam.
Oh,
Mm.
dude,
L
I know this.
O
I know this
A
word.
M.
Yeah.
Loam. Loam, a fertile soil of clay and sand containing humus.
Mm.
Or humus.
Humans? Containing
so-
humans?
Not humans. Humus. You're getting a bonus definition here
Like,
because I had to look this up. Humus, humes, the organic component of soil formed by the decomposition of leaves and other plant material by soil microorganisms.
You might call it detritus.
yeah.
Sure, that could work as well.
I'd like to like dip a little cut up pita in my humus.
The
Enjoy that.
In geology, loam can also be soil that is roughly equal proportions of sand, silt, and clay. Loam comes to us from the Old English lam. I don't know. L.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. What?
It's
What?
L-A with a line over it. I'm
No,
not
but
sure.
I need the head tilt. Like,
Yeah.
Lam.
You do that again now? Wham. Oops.
Lam.
Have to go back to my place.
That just means clay. So there you go, loam. Loam is the good earth, Eric.
So, John, it's funny you say that word because two things I've read a lot of over the last 2 years, in fact, multiple times, is Song
of
of
Thrones.
Ice and Fire. GRRM loves the word loam. He loves to talk about loam when characters are in the forest.
Yes, it's very evocative.
I'd never
of the
heard it
type
before.
Of soil.
I'd never heard it before. It's why I love reading books in the Kindle because, especially in Game of Thrones, like he just uses all kinds of crazy ass, like fancy old English words. You just tap on it and it gives you a definition. I've learned so many words that way. But the other one, so I just reread Annihilation. I just reread the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy.
You're reading the same book multiple times over, but yet
I
will
am.
not read To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah,
It's
it's,
fine. It's cool. Whatever.
John, I wouldn't try to delve too deep into what's going on in my head. All right, there's nothing good will come of that.
I've given up so many years ago.
But they use the word loam in that book probably 40 times.
It's a good word. So here we
crazy.
are.
Why don't you tell me about speaking of loam? Would you tell me about Pet Sematary?
Pet Sematary is about the opposite of loam. one could argue. I'm having a little bit of a fire situation apparently in my neighborhood here, so if you get a little bit of that background noise.
Towering Inferno over there.
Written by the original book, written by one Stephen King, the master himself. I want to say it's like his third or fourth. I believe it's his fourth book.
Also worth noting that I was just looking it up. So the original, directed by Mary Herron, really
Not
well.
it's not-
What?
It's
Excuse me.
Mary Lambert. I actually looked it up too.
Oh.
You were right about Mary. I don't know. You got yourself confused about the
Confused. Sorry.
last name.
Uh,
'Cause she
Joe's
did the
not gonna
sequel,
make
too.
There's something about Mary joke.
but
I
one of
wasn't paying
the-
attention. I
it was
playing with
a
my
mo-
toys.
it was a movie where King actually adapted the script himself.
Interesting.
Worth noting. For that.
Yeah, I mean so the book is obviously pretty well regarded. I think I would say it's in the classic period of King. So the story, well, and I should say this film was directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer. They're probably best known as the team, the directing team behind Starry Eyes, which 2014. They also participated in the Holidays film, which I think we covered here on the show as well, which was more of like an anthology situation. So yeah, as you said, remake of it's we should get into it. Obviously, I hesitate to call it a classic, but at the same time, it probably is a classic.
Pet Sematary,
I
the
would say
original,
it is.
stone cold classic, John. Top
Yeah.
10 90s. Well, actually, I
80s.
discovered today it was 1989, which I could have sworn it was a 90s movie, but
Yeah, and again, it's such a sort of like iconic. It's an iconic film. It's an iconic story. Again, it's like a very popular Stephen King book. But we're due for a remake. It's 30 years later. It's like time at a certain point. But the story kind of remains the same. You've got the Creed family. It is a father, Lewis, mother, Rachel, and then Ellie and Gage. Are the boy and the girl. The girl's about 9, Gage is like 2 or 3, and they relocate to, I believe, the town of Derry.
no, Derry was near it. It was called
Ludlow.
Ludlow, Maine.
Ludlow.
Yeah.
Derry,
yeah, so-
Indiana.
They are in Ludlow. They are relocating from Boston, essentially to kind of like regroup and reset a little bit on their family life. They had a kind of a rough go. Not you don't get a ton of the backstory, although it's alluded to. The father is a doctor, and he was working essentially in the ER, and I think dealing with a lot of the stress and just the stress of family life and balancing that against a really kind of hectic doctor career. So he moves this town. He takes a job at a university where he's going to be essentially sort of the doctor on campus. And otherwise, they're just going to live this like quiet, much more sort of rural life. They have one neighbor. His name's Judd, played here by John Lithgow. And yeah, I mean, the story really is about this family kind of adjusting. They quickly realize they have this huge property, and the daughter discovers sort of like their first day or first week that there is actually a pet cemetery on their property, kind of deep into the woods that are part of their land.
And a bunch of children having some bizarre, like, out of time animal ceremony burying thing.
Well, yeah, she sees these kids doing a funeral procession. They're banging a drum, which kind of is what she hears and responds to. But she goes and sees this pet cemetery. She also sees there's a what do they call it? It's essentially a barrier that's been created, which we come to learn basically cordons off the pet cemetery where there are actual pets from the town being buried from this older burial place that the Native American tribe that had previously inhabited rather this area had sort of realized the ground was sour, as Judd describes to the dad.
That's language they also use in the original film.
Yeah. The inciting incident is really that the cat, the family's cat, Church.
I mean, listen. People have seen Pet Sematary.
Yeah, really. So
the setup is the same.
The cat gets hit. The dad buries the cat. The cat comes back to life. They realize the cat is now evil, or at least
an asshole.
Yeah, not super cool, even by cat standards.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how would you tell?
Yeah.
Hey, look, it's just a cat doing cat stuff.
I mean, do we want to cover the sort of like one major change in the film?
Yes, but we don't need to do it right this second.
Not right now.
'cause
Okay, then let's just stop there.
I would say, warning to people, there's some fairly significant changes in this movie from the book. I think in order to talk about this movie, we're going to have to get to them very quickly. And in fact, by the time it goes all the way around and gets to me, I'm pretty much just going to blow the lid off all of it. So
Well,
I just
I
think
would.
I need
Well,
to
I would
do it,
also
John.
argue it's spoiled in the trailer.
Some
and
of it is.
if you go to the Pet Cemetery page on Wikipedia, the poster that they use on the Wikipedia page kind of also tells you what the difference is.
I just giving people fair warning that like
All right.
normally we'll wait a little while and then get into the ending, but like I have to talk about it right off the bat, so it's gonna happen.
Yeah, the very end of the film is also. I mean, everything kind of changes once you have that kind of like key change, and so we can also save the ending.
Well,
for the
maybe
very
not.
end.
We'll see.
All right.
Cece,
Yes.
you're smart and read books. Did you ever read the original Pet Sematary?
I actually haven't read the original, or I mean, I guess the book. I loved the original film, so I was very excited about the remake. And I
mean, the trailer was good.
yeah, but then I also felt like I watched the entire movie in the trailers. So.
Yeah. So what'd you think of this?
I didn't really I didn't really have too many expectations going in. I was excited for it, and I was thinking like, all right, even if they do kind of a close adaptation of it, that it could still just be zhuzhed up for the newer generation. And I mean, I enjoyed it, like it was fine, but I ultimately kind of felt like I wasted my time. It just wasn't. There wasn't anything that was really novel outside of what has already been done, and the original kind of does it better. So I was just a little let down.
John.
Yeah, I guess where I land with this is that I think it's very well directed.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually think that if you talk about Kolsch and Widmeyer, the two directors, they've got a really nice sense of like they do a great job of setting the scene. I mean, of creating the setting, right? The way the film opens is really interesting, where you get this flyover of rural Maine, right? Like the wooded Maine, and you eventually at the end of this flyover arrive at that you see a house that's on fire, and so you get this. They do a great job of kind of setting the scene. I think also they get some good performances out of some of the characters. I think ultimately the movie is it's certainly not as good as the original, and like this is going to be a problem anytime you have a remake that it doesn't live up to, or at least do something to distinguish itself from the original. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess I have a hard time saying it's not. I didn't think it was complete garbage, but I also just did not end up feeling very strongly about it.
Yeah. I think like on some level, I'm pretty with that description of it, right? Like it's pretty stylish.
Mm-hmm.
I think that at least early on, it's got some decent atmosphere and some suspense. But again, so like in a vacuum, I think maybe this movie is just fine. Like you'd watch it, it's a thriller. You're like, oh, that was kind of all right. Had some twisties, and you kind of call it a day. Unfortunately, like you just can't view it in a vacuum, and it's just not. It's not possible. I think that in this process, what I've realized that I hold the original Pet Cemetery in really high regard. I think anybody who was a kid like me in the '90s and was basically raised by a television, which is not anything about my parents. Just like I was obsessed with TV and I watched TV all the time. This was like,
well, I feel like this was like an HBO.
It was
special.
Not
too.
even HBO though. Like I don't know if it was USA Network. I want to say it was one of those TNT, USA, TBS, whatever had this and would run it all the time. And so I actually saw this movie a bunch. And the thing about the original Pet Cemetery, and it's really key to my issue with this film, is that it's a horror movie, but what it really is a story about grief. And there's a really, really, to me, important through line of the first movie that is about the depths to which you can be driven by grief. And there are three like inciting acts in the first movie. It's church dying, and they all like it's stepping stones, right? It's like it's classic King narrative building where everything is important and it all comes to a head in a perfectly logical way. It's like church dies, and his family's already really stressed out from this move, and he doesn't know what to do, and he gets like presented with this thing from Judd. He buries the cat comes back, he realizes it's really fucked up, right? Then his son dies, who's like literally a toddler, and it breaks his heart, and he like he can't handle the grief, and he makes like a really bad decision. He buries the son comes back, the son's evil and scary as shit, right? There's and then like that leads to the third act of the movie. It's like the confrontation, Gage kills a bunch of people, and then the end of the movie, like this really key scene where after everything he's seen, right? So like now he has no excuse, right? Because with Gage, he makes excuses to himself, like, well, he just died. Gage is so young and innocent, like maybe it'll be different, whatever. He deludes himself into thinking it'll be fine. It obviously isn't. But then he has no excuse at the end of the movie, and in like to me one of the most like tragically sad scenes in horror history, he buries his wife. And
you've been waiting all day to review the original Pet Sematary. I didn't realize.
But this is really important though. She comes back. The movie ends in this like incredibly powerful image of her stumbling back into the house. He hugs her and he's crying, and then we see that she has a knife behind her back, right? Like that's like it's beautiful tragedy because it's set up from beginning to end. And this movie decides to just change a bunch of things, I think, honestly, as best I can tell, just for the sake of changing them and throwing the audience off. But I don't think they appreciated like the havoc that it wreaks on the through line for the characters. And so the first thing they do, which is kind of whatever, and it's what was spoiled in the trailers, they swap the kid that gets killed. It's very clear the filmmakers did not intend that to be revealed early on because, like in the trailers, because they rope-a-dope you. Like they straight up have both kids out in the street. They want that to be a shocking moment, which gets totally robbed of that because it was in the trailers. Like I hope like most people realize that like filmmakers don't make trailers. They're typically like companies you hire to do the PR. I'm sure the filmmakers were really pissed and just had no, didn't have a say in it. But either way, it robs that moment of it, whatever. I personally think not having the youngest child die like lessens the impact a bit. Like it's still horrific, but there's something just kind of like insanely tragic about losing your youngest child in that first movie.
Yeah, I mean, look, to your point, the work goes in at all levels too, because I haven't seen the original film in a long time, but I probably, like you, have seen it 40 times. So the thing that was sort of there is setup, right? Because they make the daughter a much bigger character in this than she certainly was in the first film.
Well, look, I think that they go to great lengths here to, I think, even out, because a lot of that old King stuff was just very male oriented. It was just kind of the point of view he was writing from. It was a different time. They go to great lengths here to beef up the daughter and the wife. Like, what
I wanted to come back to the wife stuff,
so it's not the gender thing. Like I actually think maybe a more interesting thing would have been to gender swap the kids and have the baby be a girl. Maybe I don't know what it is, but it feels off to me. But then this creates another problem. So the girl dies, he buries her, she comes back. So at this point in the movie, you're about beginning of the third act, and I think I'm like kind of with it up until now. I'm not really blown away. I'm kind of whatever, but I'm okay with it. I think my review is like, sure, But she comes back, and to me, the third act is like a hot mess. Like just, it's actually crazy. How bad the screenwriting level dips in the third act.
Well, I mean, there's no nuance. It just becomes very
it also feels
action oriented.
It's actiony. It's very rushed to me. Like it doesn't feel like you're in the finale of the movie when you absolutely are in hindsight. And I think they do like another really weird thing. And this kind of sometimes remakes just tend to like make things over the top for the sake of it, right? Because you're taking the original material, you're turning the dial to 11, and what you get is in the first movie, like Gage comes back, he's evil, and he's walking around, he's just like, he's saying like, "I love you, Daddy. Play with me." Meanwhile, he's got like a scalpel in his hand.
Scalpel, yeah.
Terrifying, like all-time terrifying, right? Instead, in this movie, and they have this younger daughter come back, and there's like some moments at the very beginning that totally work, where she shambles
Yeah.
in, she's doing the like ballet dance. It's really cool. Then it's like she turns like literally comic book character evil at the drop of a hat and starts saying stuff like, "It's your fault I'm dead, Daddy," or just like
Mm.
Yeah.
really weird psychological stuff that actually wouldn't make any sense. Like she's trying to psychologically torture
Well-
people for some reason.
Yeah. I think what it is that they kind of try to go a little. So in the original film, a lot of what you're describing is that they leave largely unexplained. Like other than the fact that the ground is evil and now Gage is evil, they leave it
Yeah.
large. It's very open to interpretation, or at least there's you have to fill in the blanks in your imagination. Here they try to go a little further, and so they give you a little bit more of, oh well, I guess I'm dead, and I there's no heaven. You only go to hell, and
It's
I'm actually
like-
still in hell, but now I'm alive, but in hell at the same time.
Well, and they kind of talk
Yeesh.
about like the Wendigo and like, I mean, the whole lore.
They bring
like,
up the Wendigo out of nowhere, and it goes nowhere.
right,
I-
which
but-
I thought they were going to like use that, and I was going to be okay, cool. So that's going to be the change of the remake, and
Yeah.
they literally mention it, and that was it.
It's so I also think, and this, you know, you can debate this, but I didn't care for the child actress, and it's not. I don't necessarily think it's her fault. I think that she's given very hacky, bad dialogue to speak,
Mhm.
and the entire sorry, the entire suspense of the third act revolves around you buying her as like evil stabby daughter, and like not even buying into it, but being afraid of it, and it's almost silly. Like I actually think the last 30 minutes of this movie, brilliant comedy. Like if you like best comedy of the year, and
I
it's
mean,
like
brilliant is strong.
that. I'm joking, obviously, but like
No,
so
yeah,
I think
I don't disagree with you. I would go to bat for the girl. I actually think she's actually fine in the earlier parts of the film. She does the things that I liked about what they did is the art direction, or the sort of costume design. No, essentially her face and the way that her face was just slightly deformed, like her one eye droops
Yeah.
a little bit.
Mm.
That stuff was off-putting and upsetting. But I think more in the way they want. To your point, it's every time she opens her mouth and starts explaining, there's basically they
silly,
redo
and the way she I don't even remember who it was. I guess it was maybe the
Judd.
mom. The way she stabs the mom is so silly. She's literally like prison style, like
no,
it's
that
just
was
like,
Judd when she kills Judd. So they
Okay.
redo the Achilles slashing.
Yeah.
In the original, wasn't it the father who get? No, I guess it
No,
wasn't.
it's-
It was
No,
it's
it
Judd.
was the neighbor.
But again, it's like it's shot a lot more. I mean, they're working around like a very tiny child in that thing too. But it's like he's hiding under the bed and he just kind of reaches out. It's like
which
know,
they
The
played with that
worst.
here because he walks up to the bed, he looks at the bed. No,
yeah,
but
it
to your
just
point,
didn't work for me.
so she cuts him, but then they have a minute or so of dialogue between the two of them in the house
silly.
where she's explaining like why she's evil now, and it's just not
So
necessary.
there's another thing for me, and this to me is like the thing that kills this movie, dead in the water, and that is that evil characters who have come back in this movie actively drag alive people to the pet cemetery, like kill them and bury them to bring them back as evil people. Like,
Mm.
in other words, spoiler alert, like Judd does not, or the husband does not bury his wife in this movie. The daughter, right? The daughter drags her to
Yes.
the pet cemetery and buries her, which robs the entire arc of the husband character, where like you're seeing how far he goes in his grief, right? It
Yeah,
totally ruins it, and it turns into like this bizarre, cheap horror movie thing that is just
Mhm.
not the deal with the original story. I also just like, I have so many issues with this, but the casting I think is really off. The father
Wait,
in
which
this,
casting didn't you like? Because
the father in
I
this
kinda liked
movie,
it.
I don't like this guy in general. I think that the father in this movie has the face of an evil person. Like he looks.
Oh, 100%.
He
This
looks
guy
like,
cannot do anything where he doesn't look like an asshole.
he looks like a friggin' demon in real life come to
Yeah.
life.
Man, I
And-
hope he tweeted at us this week.
But
That
do you
would
remember
make
this?
my life.
Do you remember this though? The last time we saw him was in Terminator Genesis, and we were joking about it then, where he plays John Connor, and the whole movie you're like, dude, he's evil. Look at his face. Like he's
Yeah.
literally the most evil looking person that's ever been
There's-
born.
Yeah,
You look at him, you think that guy drinks and beats his kids.
And
Like,
so
that's...
and so we're asked here to like feel sympathy for him, which A, I'm just not, I can't get there. But B, in the second half of the movie, whereas the father in the original, it's like this heartbreaking, subtle performance of him just being broken, like a broken man. Here, when this guy starts to crack in like the second, third act, he goes full on loony bin. Like he literally looks out of his mind. And again, it's like every place where in the original movie was layered with like subtle hints of emotion, this movie is just it takes it to this like silly degree.
Eric, you might be
Well,
excited to learn he
I mean,
played Ted
technically-
Kennedy. Sorry, in
Evil, you mean
Chappaquiddick,
evil
so-
Ted Kennedy? Is this like a weird bizarro world?
Well, no, in Chappaquiddick, where Ted Kennedy like kills a lady, and you know. In any event, sorry, Cece.
So, I mean, I think that I totally agree with you that the remake loses a lot of the punch that comes with the raw, like unabashed grief that the original has. But I think that the route they were probably trying to go, especially with bringing up the Wendigo aspect, I mean, the actual lore of a Wendigo is that like it's a creature that comes back and feeds off of other humans and is very murderous, and like there's this insatiable desire to basically like cannibalize or whatever. So I think that like they probably thought it was a great idea to bring it up and like to go that direction, but then once they started down that road, they didn't really know how to like I don't know, polish it, because it just seems like there's no it's I don't need reasoning in every movie, but like this movie definitely leaves you being like, I don't understand
Well-
why the ending happened
Yeah,
the
I
way
mean,
that it ended.
one of the things that struck me as I've been thinking about is that, like, again, we talk about it, this kind of being, because it made a shitload of money, right? So now we're just going to start seeing these things. But the thing about it is that it is a sprawling story that literally takes place over hundreds of years. The original like technically, right? There's so
Yeah,
much,
yeah,
you
yeah.
can mine that stuff from the whole timeline. The original movie was like a kind of cheaply made for TV thing that a lot of people have like nostalgia for, but tons of room,
It wasn't objectively good.
tons of room for improvement. The problem with this thing is like A, the original is awesome, but also B, it's a very simple character driven story. And whereas there was room to kind of like iterate and improvise with it, you do it here and you see what happened, which is like they kind of lose all the threads to me.
Well, no, your insight about the impact that the change has on the actual impact of the story is the sort of like nail in the coffin, so to speak, of this versus the original for sure. And sort of to Cece's point, you do get to a point where you're kind of like, what in the fuck is this all about?
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the very ending, because like I
Well,
wasn't 100% sure.
yeah,
I mean, it's sad in a different way.
yes,
Yeah.
there's two other things I kind of want to touch on quickly. One was that on the other casting note is that like as much as I love gruff old man John Lithgow, he felt off to me here. I think again, it's another case of like the writing is not really helping him.
Well, yeah, I thought he was fine,
mean,
but
listen,
I agree some of the dialogue was
it's
stilted.
really tough to be compared to Fred Gwynn, who like is just an all-time actor, and that role
Old gruff man.
that role
Yeah.
was him in a lot of ways. But in the original, he's really written more as like, again, the theme is grief, right? In the original, Fred Gwynn is a guy who has just been kind of broken down by the sort of mundane grief of living a long life, and it makes sense why he wants to help the husband out in circumventing the grief, right? Here, John Lithgow's character is more kind of painted like a country bumpkin or something, like a weird, like there are scenes where he's almost like a simpleton, like the way that it's very strange. I don't know. It's just like that whole thread was also lost to me.
How was Zelda? That's really what I want to hear
I mean,
about.
well, I want to ask John and Cece like how they felt about the portrayal of Zelda in this because
So
they go a lot more into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you brought it up because that was the other thing that was a little weird to me about some of the choices that were made here. And Eric, you sort of put forward the idea that maybe they're trying to expand the mom's character.
Mhm.
Like to me, it was a little off. Like I don't remember exactly how the mother's especially her like background the story of her childhood. I don't remember exactly how that's handled in the 89 version, but
She
I
just
don't
kind of tells it as a story,
yeah.
and explains
Yeah,
Zelda.
it's just like is it just one literally just one flashback or maybe she has a dream about it later in the movie or something.
Yeah.
It's she tells the story, and we kind of get the flashback, but then as she's kind of going insane in the movie, like she pumps in a room, and it's like that iconic scene of Zelda like just popping up in bed, like
I mean,
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
thing is, again, it's like in the original movie, the mom disappears for wide swaths of it. Like she's
Mhm.
not a
Yeah.
factor for a lot of it. I did appreciate what this movie was trying to do, bringing the mother character, like making her fuller. The problem is that at its heart, though,
It
it's
didn't
still a story about the husband's grief, and so well, you've kind of got these two things like competing with each other now.
well, yeah, and it didn't feel integrated into the film. So
Right.
when the Zelda stuff first comes up, it's sort of out of left field, and you're like, why is the mom all upset all of a sudden? This was something that literally happened to her 20 plus
Well,
years ago.
she says since we moved here, I can't stop thinking about it, and so
Yeah.
there's a
No,
suggestion that like the I don't know, like the graveyard is like
the sour, it's the
causing
land.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
it's
sour.
sour, John. It's
because
No, I know.
Zelda legitimately like. I saw Pet Cemetery. I forget when it came out, but like I was a teenager. I watched it a ton, like when I was in high school. Zelda gave me like nightmares as like a 16-year-old. Like
Yeah.
to
Oh
this
yeah.
day, still
I
terrifies
mean,
me.
they honestly kind of just mine it. Like the look is fairly similar, but they kind of just mine it for jump scares, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I
Yeah.
saw some pictures of it online, and like it doesn't do it justice.
It's
Well,
not the
there's
same.
not a single the thing that was so scary about the way it's handled in 89, at least to me, the thing that I remember is that there's a single long shot
Yeah.
of her in the bed that
Fuck.
I think she gets out of the bed or
I also think I seem to
It's that
remember
pop-up, like-
it's
Yeah.
shot in the like little girl's POV looking at her too. So you're like
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
shoes of her
Yeah.
like walking into the room, I feel like.
Well, and the way they handled the stuff with the dumbwaiter, I'm actually curious, and this is where it sucks that none of us have read the book. I'm curious how it's handled. Like, is the dumbwaiter in
I wonder. Yeah, I
the
don't know.
book? Like, this actually could be in some ways a more realistic portrayal
Sure.
from the book. I actually don't know, but it did not feel well integrated into the story. And to your point, Eric, at some point they do also get the mom out of the movie because this is the other
I mean, right,
pacing
the
thing.
mom gets no arc at all, right? Because she disappears and then comes back and gets murdered.
Yeah, well, but this is the other pacing thing that's a little weird here. That and it's just to jump back really quickly. After the daughter comes back, so if I remember the first film correctly, the son comes back, and it basically all concludes in one night, right? Like the father, in his grief, goes and buries his son, but
Well,
the
right.
mom's still around.
No, the mom is not. Like this is what I'm saying. Like after Gage dies in the original movie, the mom
The
goes
mom
to
leaves?
stay with her parents. The mom is
Gotcha.
with her parents until basically the end of the movie. Like
Gotcha.
she shows up, I think, after Gage has already killed Judd, and then she's kind of like the last person to be killed. Like it's basically the end of the third act.
Yeah.
But like
No,
so
I
in
mean
this
I remember
movie,
the ending.
they-
But I
they-
couldn't remember where the mom was.
they attempt to work it for more suspense here, where like the mother basically instead of coming back at the end of the third act, kind of comes back in the middle of the third act or almost the beginning. And there's a little bit they try to play it for suspense where they kind of show her driving home, she's stuck in
Yeah.
traffic, whatever. But then it's just like, oh, she's there.
We
It's like-
needed that stuck in traffic.
They
scene.
don't,
It
but
was
they
so
don't like
ridiculous.
milk it long enough. Then she just shows
Yeah.
up the next scene, like 5 minutes later.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It was all very bizarre. Well, and
That's particularly the scene
sequence-
too, where I think the husband's acting really shows itself for being shitty. Where she shows up and he like sticks his head out the door and he's like, "Hey, honey," like he's Jack Nicholson in The Shining or something. Like I cannot get over this guy's performance. It's like so out of left field.
Yeah. The no, well, and the father spends so much time with the daughter, and there's several scenes of them interacting. There's the bath scene, the dancing scene. There's a scene when she first comes home before he gives her the bath. Like, it's very it's just very, very strange.
I will say
So,
the bath scene was like incredibly uncomfortable
Yeah,
and like
it
just
was
really gross
her-
and weird.
Her having her hair brushed and it like it
It's like coming
um,
out
yeah,
and the
that was too
stitches.
much.
Yeah, that was pretty horrific, I would think. Yeah.
that's when the thing for me, because again, I think the logic of the essentially the logic of the dad character falls apart. That he clearly realizes at that point, this might have been a mistake.
Right.
But instead of like trying to resolve it, he just
But-
keeps
But
going
again,
along.
it's
I
like
don't know.
it's part of what they're losing by kind of screwing with this thread so much is like
Yeah.
you see that slow descent into madness in the original film, and if I recall correctly, I think he ends up killing Gage himself. I think he injects him because he's a doctor in the first movie too.
Yeah.
He like gives him some kind of thing and kills him like in a syringe, I believe. So I don't know. I just think like in a vacuum, this thing is fine. Oh well, let's talk about the end. So again,
Yeah,
like
I was gonna say,
again-
where did you land on the very final?
it's I mean, I just like to me, I just kind of threw my arms up because to me, the ending is just like it's kind of the natural train wreck that you end up at when you change all this crap in such a
Nah.
bizarre way.
Now we're
Yeah.
a zombie family.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, and that's what,
in the
like, I
end,
mean-
the wife gets murdered. The daughter drags the wife to the pet cemetery. She comes
Mhm.
back, and then I think the wife kills the husband, then drags
Yeah.
the husband to the pet cemetery, and then the movie ends. So meanwhile, the youngest boy is alive, and he's been in the
Mhm.
car for the whole third act because
Yeah,
the dad
dad
stuffed him
hides
in the
him
car. And the end of the movie is the whole family now like burial ground zombies coming to like get the kid. I don't know if they're gonna kill him or they're just gonna be a weird zombie family now. But the ending image is just them walking with shovels and like again, this is like just a real cheap like Bagul kind of a moment for me that doesn't feel earned, and I don't what is this? Again,
well,
it's like
hold on.
I mean,
I
I
think it
guess
was
it's
earned.
saying- Yeah, I mean, I think that
I guess.
it's trying to go down the route of like misery it loves company, to be cliche, and that like basically this situation is destroying their family, but I don't really understand like what they love each other enough they want to be dead together in the afterlife. Like I don't really know.
It's kind
I
of
don't
sweet.
I mean, to me, like, I just want to be clear, like, and I think people who listen a lot will understand that I don't think any of us these days are like patently against the idea of remakes. We all, for the
No,
most part,
yeah.
like embrace the Halloween remake. I think when it's done, well, Cece didn't, but you didn't hate it though. You like
No, I
like-
didn't hate it,
but
but
it's
yeah,
like,
you're right. I mean,
I-
I'm not against remakes.
My point being, I think this new kind of
Yes, you are.
this new kind of generation of movies like It and Halloween, where like they're getting filmmakers who really care about the material. They seem to understand it. They're paying it its due. I think there's actually a lot of value to be had there. This to me is like kind of the worst of the other kind of remakes, where to me, it's like you remade a movie and you didn't understand why it was such an effective story in the first place. And that's what leaves me just with like John a sour taste in my mouth at the end of the day.
I'm rolling my
Mm.
eyes.
I see
Also,
what you did there.
also, never once in this movie do they say anything about the Micmac Indians, and I was really disappointed because that's such a fun thing to say.
Well,
Micmac.
Micmac.
They talk about the Native Americans, or
Yeah.
I don't know if they named the tribe, but
It's
Yeah, I can't remember if they do either.
I'm trying to remember if there were any other
I just
ridiculous things I enjoyed.
listen. The fact that John Lithgow does not have a main accent in this movie is a travesty. Like, listen,
Oh,
I know you're
that's
trying to
disappointing.
like separate it from the first movie, but this dude who claims he's lived in the same house in the backwoods of Maine his entire life would be almost unintelligible to listen to. And if you're not going to lean into that, like, what are we even doing here?
He's just
Fair.
walking around with lobsters.
But again, it just I don't know. It loses the authenticity. I feel like. No, sir,
Were
I
you
don't
upset
like it.
they didn't get a Stephen King
Cameo.
cameo?
Yeah, he probably looked at the script and was like, "This is dog shit. No thanks."
How dare you?
He was like, I directed Maximum Overdrive, but I won't get near this thing.
He was like, "This is dog shit, but I will cash your checks."
Yeah, well,
So-
yeah. Exactly. I don't know, man. Joe, just preemptively like to say that I would like to, for now, to place this on my worst of 2019 list.
Oh yeah.
Dang.
Let me pull that up. What? Where would you put it?
Oh, I don't know. What else is on my worst list?
Give me a second to find it. Why don't you guys do your recommendations or something when I do that?
All right. Would you recommend this movie, Cece?
Wait for on demand.
John Schnars.
I'm gonna go with no.
Under no circumstances should you watch this movie, John.
Damn.
All right, guys. It's going to do it for Pet Sematary. Let's take a quick break and do some fan mail.
You really think a cop did this? Why not?
Why does Jack keep killing people?
He'll kill again. He enjoys killing.
When the most terrifying man in the city carries a badge,
I'm gonna read you your rights.
you have the right to remain silent
I know who committed these murders.
forever.
He's back. Only now he kills innocent people.
Maniac Cop, rated R.
Hi, I'm Denise Crosby from Pet Cemetery and Mortuary and The Walking Dead, and you are listening to Bloody Good Horror.
Send your emails to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or hit us up on Twitter at BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. And don't forget to pick up back episodes of the show at podcast.bloodygoodhorror.com.
And we are back. Not gonna lie, John, feels real good to just savage a movie.
I mean,
It's been
there's
a-
been way worse savagings.
It's been a while.
Well, Glass is the only other movie on your worst of list, and I felt like you were pretty.
Like, I
pretty-
think when this show someday ends, John, the one thing I'll miss is like when I see a bad movie, just be like, who am I gonna complain to for 45 minutes about this that has to listen to me?
No one.
Yes,
We
I
could
know.
Scream
we could
into the
Laura,
void.
Laura, and your
Yeah,
daughters.
Exactly. Yeah,
They're
exactly.
literally gonna be like, "We're moving out."
This is
Yes,
ridiculous.
we're on the
I'll be like,
12.
listen, can you pull up my worst list of the year, please?
Yeah, the dinner table. All right, let's go around.
Can you
Would you
bust
recommend
this out?
this?
It's written in crayon. Info at bloodygoodhorror.com. Go ahead, Joe.
No, would you put this above Glass as far as worst of?
Oh, no. Because, listen, it's going to be really hard for anything to unseat Class,
Mm.
which actually is related to my first email, John. Info at bloodygoodhorror.com is the email address. This is not fan mail, but I wanted to bring it up. So I got an email from somebody offering me like influencer swag for the release of Glass, which I didn't respond to because I don't want that in my house. However, the
Do you mean on video or something? Why?
yeah,
why would-
it's a Blu-ray release.
Okay.
But I wanted to see. So the subject of the email was Shyamalan-a-thon, and I was
Ooh.
really
God.
I really want to know if you could say that for me.
Wait, how did you say
Shyamalan-a-thon.
Shyamalan-a-thon?
Okay, all right, nice work.
That's sort of like it makes me think of my name, Jonathan. You know, it's Shyamalan.
Shyamalan-a-thon.
Jonathan Alam. Jonathan Alam.
The
Love it.
Shyamalana Jonathan.
Listen to all your best episodes. We'll call it a John Alanathon.
One email tonight, Rhiannon says, the music video for Chemical Brothers Believe is like a cool wee horror film. And the video for Aphex Twins Come to Daddy used to scare the bejesus out of me. What are your favorite and or scariest music videos? Lots of love, Rhiannon. P.S. The show has been particularly amazing recently.
Oh.
That's good to hear because I thought we were phoning it in lately, Joe.
Well, you know.
Listen,
I think we're so good now that we can
Oh my
think
God.
we're phoning it in, and
our,
it just
our
turns out
30
being-
30% is like killing it.
I think we've had good movies to discuss. That has actually been my feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Schism music video used to unsettle me. It used to give me anxiety.
Which one?
Um,
The Apex Twin? Oh, you did. I
hold
thought
on,
you were
I'm
talking
looking.
about one of the ones she mentioned. You're just
No.
randomly
No,
saying
she
there
asked-
was
the
one.
Tool video of Schism.
Yeah,
No.
no.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, she
all right,
asked
all
what
right.
ours were. I mean, I'm gonna say, Joe, green Jello's Three Little Pigs.
Oh my God!
Currently
classic.
green jelly. If you came late to the game,
Hello Jello, green
that
Jello.
that video was like a scary bootleg, like claymation rendition of Three Little Pigs, and it was
It was our generation's aha take on me.
sure.
Broke boundaries. I mean,
I'm a huge Thriller fan. Also, like,
oh yeah.
there was a time where
But did it scare you?
probably when I was a little kid, like there was a time where every year MTV would make a big deal out of it. Like, it's that time of year, we're gonna play Thriller, and they'd play like the behind the scenes special and everything. Like, probably
They
not.
would do like their top 100 videos of all time, and it would
Yeah.
always be number one.
Probably not doing that too much these days, Joe. I'm just gonna guess. But I remember always like looking forward to that, and that's kind of when I knew spooky time was here. It was like a tradition every year.
Yeah, I agree. I was a huge fan. That was my first tape that I ever
Nice,
ever
yeah.
owned.
I have
Guess
the
what
V8.
my first tape was? 69 Boys.
Oh my God.
Was it wait? What were
Yep,
they? They were
Tootsie Roll.
Cotton candy, sweet as gold. Let me see it, Tootsie Roll.
Yep.
Did you
You know what you've been told? It ain't the butterfly, it's the Tootsie Roll.
Did your parents buy that for you?
No, my aunt did, who's
Oh.
10 years older than me.
Cool aunt.
I bought that with my own money that I earned from my job while I was in high school.
Oh, how sweet.
Yeah. Great. Anyway, that's all for email. info@bloodygoodhorror.com. Joe, what's on Twitter?
We got tweets, and this week we got an extra hashtag because I accidentally put AskBGY as one of the hashtags to send in, but luckily I think everybody fixed it and realized I was an idiot. But the one we normally use is starting with BGH Classics. That's if you're listening to an old episode, some tickles your fancy, and you want to send it on in. We got two this week. First up from Skizbot. This is an Eric quote. Says, John Schnars, he's watching you through your webcam right now. Stop touching yourself. He would like you to know that your parents got divorced because you touched yourself and he could see you. That was episode 332, the Poltergeist remake.
He worked at Google. He's 100% looked at all of you on your webcams.
Absolutely. For whatever reason, I'm stuck in time, and I still think John works at Google.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%.
It's been a while, guys.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
John is Mr. Google, basically.
I can still remember just
I think I invented Google. I didn't want to let you guys know.
It's
but...
true.
And then we got one from our good friend Flora. That's at Flora Duhan. I just feel like the lines of pudding are being blurred here, and I don't feel good about it. And that was Eric from episode 294, The Sacrament.
I would have guessed that was a joke quote for
I'm
sure.
going to go out on a limb and say I was talking about tapioca pudding because I've been long on record about just how much of a crime against humanity that is.
Tapioca? What about rice pudding? What's your stance on that?
Same. Hard same.
I love rice pudding.
Yeah, I'm with Joe.
I don't want textures in my
immediately.
pudding. I don't want to talk about this, but it's... No.
From like a diner, rice pudding.
I've never had either, and they both sound gross.
The only thing that is allowed to be in pudding is if you do like a banana pudding thing with like the Necco wafers and the whipped cream, like that I can get with. But that's different. It's not incorporated.
Do you guys have Magnolia cupcakes near you?
Yeah.
No.
If you like banana pudding, their banana pudding, it'll change your life. Eric, when you come out for the meetup, we will not be far from Magnolia for the patron get together Friday night.
Cool.
We'll go get some banana pudding. It'll change your life.
I bet it'll probably kill me because of the way I eat right now.
Yeah, exactly. The other hashtag we use is AskBGH. That's every week. If you have a thought about the movie we're watching, or you just need life advice, just send that in.
I'm really excited, Joe. I'm really excited about some of the material we've been getting in since we started specifying like it doesn't have to be about the movie. In fact, it's better if it's not.
We got a bunch today, so let's get this going. First up from at Library of Congress. I never tweet, so after having this account for 9 years, I am a few tweets away from sending out my 300th tweet. What does the entire BGH crew, but really mostly Joe and Cece, think my 300th tweet should be?
Ooh.
Great question.
Yeah.
I think it should be...
I would say just like full-on conspiracy theory, like 9/11 was an inside job.
If you can actually combine all of the conspiracy theories into one...
Yeah,
I think that might just be that QAnon or whatever, but
I mean,
get
I'm more
creative with
about I'm more about aliens, so I want that type of conspiracy theory tweeted.
We never landed on 9/11. Anybody else suggestions? Otherwise, we'll move on.
I think it should be promoting Bloody Good Horror.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Next up from @Dungeons R Us. Why don't you swap around hosting roles more instead of only when Eric is out?
I'll let you guys answer
Ooh,
this.
shot at Eric there. I like it.
I mean, John does a job, but I don't think anyone else could take that role.
Listen, it is.
Listen, I've been doing this.
Eric's very good at it.
We've all been doing our roles for 10 years. We each have very specific roles in the show, and you don't like to mess with the chi.
Yep.
I will say I feel less anxiety when I find out Eric isn't going to be available. Like, it used to be that when you weren't there, we were just like, fuck it, we're not doing the show. Now it's plausible to me that we would do the show without you. So
listen, it's great. You guys do a great job.
Yeah.
Next up from @RealityBoy, and he sent this in twice because he wanted us to really see it. I'm 100% confused. It's a picture of a kangaroo, but like all jacked up muscular, and it just says, Joe, no, we have a Roger.
I mean, I don't get the text. I don't get the text part, but I do recall you saying last week you could take a kangaroo, and we were like, dude, they're jacked. There's no way you could take them.
That's probably why, yeah. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
They literally have like man muscle. Like, look, I'm sure I can picture this in my head. This picture that he's.
Yeah. Next up, we got another one from Dungeons R Us. Trailers. Do you prefer going into a movie completely blind, or do you watch the trailers? All or some? Trailers seem to give away key elements / twists of the movie. It's becoming a gamble.
Yeah. I only watched the first trailer for Us, and I'm glad I didn't watch any more.
Yeah,
I used to be in the camp of I loved trailers, and it helped get me hyped for a movie. I think the trailers have gotten worse. I just think that, and maybe it's me. I don't know.
But we've talked about this before. Somebody wrote in, or I remember seeing an article somewhere where they were saying that basically what happened is somewhere along the line, studios started focus testing trailers, and in addition to the movies. And so one of the questions when you do your exit survey is, do you understand like exactly what this movie's about? And that's one of the things that they need to like juice their score up on before they'll like let the trailer go through, which is why you get every story beat.
Yeah, I mean, listen, now we might get too far into the weeds.
The only time
like,
you don't is when it's like an auteur director who has just like top to bottom creative control over their material.
Well, no, totally. I think the other point of what you're saying is like marketing a movie, bringing a movie, especially a new concept to theaters anymore, is so goddamn expensive that the financial risk is actually extremely high, which leads to exactly what you're talking about, Eric, like where they feel that they have to just focus test the shit out of it to the point where people, and look, maybe there's evidence that says when people quote unquote know more about a movie, they're more likely to show up. But for people like us who are going to go to the movies no matter what, I would rather not know as much.
Which is funny. Which is funny because I actually think that there's a lot of like case evidence over the last decade or whatever where incredibly successful movies, they were successful on the backs of mysterious trailers. Like look at like Cloverfield Lane. Like you didn't know what that movie was about. Look at like Jordan Peele's a great example. You look at Get Out and Us. Like okay, there's a little reveal in the Us trailer, but that really is just a bunch of batshit crazy imagery. You have no idea what the movie's about.
Those movies, I mean, the counterpoint, and again, we're not necessarily disagreeing, but the counterpoint is just like, those are risky movies. It's just riskier to do that. And it's sort of to your point where when you have an auteur...
What I'm saying is I think it's partly why they were so successful because they are old school, like effective trailers. There was that podcast interview with Blum where he was saying he wanted to reveal the character turn in Get Out in the trailer, and he basically fought with Peele for weeks, and he was like, I have to admit, I was straight up wrong about it. You know what I mean?
It's just it's hard to prove the counterfactual, and like I can't call to mind all of the trailers that reveal. You know, I mean,
just admit that I'm right, and we'll move on.
All right, if that's what it's gonna take.
All right, good. Next up, we got two from Skizbot. First says, I already have a ticket to see a 40th anniversary screening of Alien in October. Is there a movie that you missed or were unable to see in theaters the first time around that you really want to experience on the big screen?
The Shining.
Oh, that would be really good. I've seen a lot of stuff.
You should come to Atlanta every Halloween. Our Plaza Theater plays The Shining
Nice.
in its original format. Yep.
Is it like a midnight thing? Because I can't do that.
Is it what?
Is it like a midnight screening? Because
no, it's not.
Do they have a 4 p.m. seniors?
They do
for
actually.
Okay.
They
John,
have like a 10 a.m. too.
John, 4 p.m. is no good either. John, I eat dinner at 5.
I got to see when they did the Blade Runner director's cut. I think it was the 25th anniversary. I saw that in the theater, and that was great.
That sounds exhausting. Like, was that like long. 9 hours?
No, it was probably like 2 hours 20, 2 hours 30, something like that. But I loved it. I mean, that's one that I wanted to see it in big screen, and to get that sort of like restoration and the the extra cut was great.
I caught the original Halloween at a drive-in a couple of years ago. And it was
that's good.
One of the coolest things.
The drive-in near us, it's only like 20 minutes away. Every October, they just start showing old horror movies. I love it. Like, it's great. We go like every weekend.
I was gonna say they're about to show. Our theater near us is about to show whatever happened to Baby Jane or.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But I saw Rosemary's Baby last year or 2 years ago, and that was really good too.
I've never seen The Thing, the Carpenter version, on the big screen, and that's like a top 5 for me. So I gotta, at some point, I'll get to it. So.
All right. I got thrown off. But you are, Rose. You are in the wheelchair. Could you defeat your undead children or pets in combat? I'm not answering this. This is a fucking awful question.
Yeah,
terrible human being.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah. Next up from
was that Skizbot? We're gonna have to give them a hard
that was.
Oh, damn it.
Next up we got 2 from Codiolo. Watched session 9 and liked it. Disagree hard with your site's overall negative review just because they didn't like the end, in which the writer not only spoils the movie but made an error getting the names Patricia mixed up with
Can
Mary.
we look at who on our site even reviewed session 9? It was like a decade ago.
Not saying the movie's great, just saying FYI.
Wait, session 9, I'm pretty sure we gave a glowing podcast review.
Yeah, the podcast, but I guess
did we do it on the show?
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was before me, and I remember I went and watched it because you guys loved it so much.
I only saw it because we covered it. This was like when I think it was probably in the first 50 episodes, if I had to guess. And
maybe it was one of my staff picks because it came out in like 2000.
Remember, yeah, I had never even, I wasn't familiar with it, and it was one of those times where I was exposed to something and was just like, holy shit, what is this?
I don't know if it's Mark's legendary search function on BGH.com, but I can't even find a review on our site of this. So
there definitely is one. It's loading for me. It's just going super slow. I'm trying to see who did it. It was 2011. The review was posted, and it was written by Angelo. A 6.
That's Angelo.
Yeah.
All right. You take that up with Angelo.
Joe, you did mention it. Joe, you did mention it in the news on January 4th, 2013.
I know. I'm really scared about what that potentially says. It's probably not smart.
Do you want me to? So you said.
Yeah, sure.
You said I can't imagine anyone is looking forward to the new Halle Berry. You spelled this wrong, by the way. Very wrong. Halle Berry flick, The Hive. But if you are, you should know that the title has changed to The Call and will see the light of day on March 25th. The bright spot here is that the film is being directed by Session 9 main man Brad Anderson. The dark spot is that it's being put out by WWE Films, so there will most likely be a Stone Cold cameo.
There you go.
Classic Joe.
Brad Anderson was such a weird director because he actually did. There's at least 1 or 2 other movies of his that I've seen and liked, but he never seemed to really get to any level of.
As a person who's not like huge on ghost movies, I think Session 9 is one of the best ever made.
Nope. All right, we got a bunch more here. So another one from Cody Ulu. What would it be funnier if Pet Sematary was further misspelled as Sematary? Sematary. Now that would truly be sour ground. Sematary? Sematary.
Semen.
All right, let's move on.
Sementary.
Yeah, Joe, it's a semen joke. He's making
Sementary.
Yeah.
Sementary. All right, next up from Four Color Craig. What's your best quitting your job story?
I mean, I don't have a good quitting my job story, but Kyle always gives me a really hard time about that I broke up with a boyfriend. Then when he went on a ski trip, I moved out while he was gone.
Boy, I like that.
Oh boy, yeah, that's pretty good.
I've quit a lot of jobs, and the last one before this one that I'm at, I quit I got the job offer for the place I was going to while we were on break for like this giant workshop with like senior leadership, which somehow I was a part of, and we're supposed to be like fixing all the problems and solving all of our budgetary issues. And then of course we went out for like, no joke, like a $5,000 dinner, and there was only like 4 of us. And I got the job offer during that, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck what you guys decide. And the next day I quit my job. Hung over on White Russians.
Awesome. Joe, everybody.
That's a bad hangover.
Yeah. I was once fired by the little girl in One Crazy Summer. I think I've told that story on this show before.
I love
Chrissy
that movie.
Gels. She was my boss at a former job.
Did people just make that face at her?
Yeah. Dog from Mars. What was that?
Sorry, it's my phone.
Cece, what are you watching on your phone?
All right. Next one.
You're not going to even try to come up with an excuse?
I mean, it was just, I got an Instagram notification and it was just a video. It wasn't porn.
No, it was a video. I'm sure of that.
Next up from our good friends, Night of the Living Podcast. Is this a mole? Why does it keep changing colors?
You should get that checked out.
Yeah, definitely consult your physician if you want to get that looked at.
I would say go at it with a knife and just play it safe.
Just make sure to get a good
Have
margin.
some White Russians.
Yeah.
Get in there
Or-
deep. No, I'm just kidding.
Get in there deep.
Next up from @Lovecraft Tapes, and I appreciate he went in because he forgot to put the Ask BGH hashtag, which drives me fucking insane when people forget to do that and they send in questions.
Says the guy who wrote the wrong hashtag in the tweet today.
Well, I wrote the wrong hashtag, but at least I wrote a hashtag. Besides Pet Sematary, what are your other favorite evil animal / evil kid movies? And no, Joe, Problem Child doesn't count.
Oh, I loved Problem Child when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Movie's
That
great.
movie was terrible.
Evil kid movie. I cannot think. I mean, Cujo I loved as a kid, although I have
Yeah.
not watched it recently. I'm curious if it holds up.
Yeah, I don't even
I
know.
saw it not terribly long ago, and it's good. In terms of stuff we cover for the show, you know what I actually think about kind of regularly, and I can't remember if we even thought it was that good, but the movie Orphan. You guys remember
Yeah.
Orphan? That
Yeah,
movie
those-
was wacky.
Yeah,
that's
it was.
creepy as hell.
That was very creepy.
What was that Macaulay Culkin one? The Good Son?
Oh,
Yeah,
that one was
yeah,
creepy
yeah.
too. Yeah.
All right, let's move on because we got more. Next up from @MarcusUC26. With the decade almost over, what horror movies would you guys consider the biggest disappointment and surprise?
I'd
This is
ha-
one I need a little
I know. I should have
pre-warning on.
prepared.
Yeah.
I'd have to see.
I'll-
I'd have to see
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
list. I'd have to see a list. Although it's a good point, John. We should honestly probably start working on some stuff for the end of the year to wrap up
Mm,
It's
stuff.
2019. You got 2020 to get through too, guys. Chill out.
No, but
I mean, I
no.
think Get
The
Out
decade.
like kind of came out of nowhere and was like a huge surprise for everyone. I thought
Cabin-
that was awesome.
Cabin in the Woods.
I didn't
Definitely.
dislike it, but and I'm kind of in the CC camp here. I was really let down with the Halloween reboot. Like,
Yeah.
it bummed me out. Like, and I think it's because I saw it on DVD. It was very Something About Mary, where I'd heard so much about how amazing it was, and then I watched it and I'm like, oh, all right, well that.
Are you telling me you didn't like Something About Mary as well?
I didn't think it was that funny.
Sorry,
it's funny.
This
Like
might be the end of the
it's
podcast.
funny.
I gotta
This
go.
this topic's come up a lot lately, but the Friday the 13th remake was just a huge bummer when that thing came out.
Oh yeah, there you
There's
go.
been a lot of
Which
like revisionist history on that lately, Joe, and I am not having it.
Yeah. Or the Nightmare remake, I think, was even worse.
Yeah, not great.
But I forget what year that came out. That may have been before 2010.
I wanna
Talking about weed smoking and growing Jason.
Jason setting traps. It's horseshit. But I'm pretty sure that was like 09, so that would be a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
Well, not this decade, I guess.
Next up from @SwimDMC. Most unexpectedly stomach-churning moments in recent pop culture. The Stitch scene and Pet Sematary and shirtless Uncle Fester in the new Addams Family trailer.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Little
haven't
things
seen
that
that.
got you bad. It's animated. It actually looks really fun. I'm kind of excited about it. I don't know. Does
Wait,
anyone
the Stitch scene? What Stitch scene?
the Stitch
Where he's
scene?
we just talked about it in the middle of our show, John, where she's in the tub and he's brushing her hair.
Oh, yeah. I
The
wouldn't.
staples
I
in
would
the
have called
back of
that
her
the I don't know, the bath scene, the Stitch scene. All right,
I
whatever.
don't know. I thought that like when she cut his Achilles heel, like that was pretty like,
Yeah.
or Achilles tendon was. that's a
It's
little
all
too
that's
much.
always gruesome. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how many times you see it.
Yeah.
Next up from at Snapcaster Madge.
Do you want to say that any slower next time? Or?
Snapcaster Madge. He's just being a dick. He said, might want to try Ask BGH instead because I put the wrong hashtag. I don't know. I mean, he's balding, so I don't think he's in any position to throw insults at me.
Hello, hi.
One more. Same guy. What beers are your beer guts boys and ghouls digging this spring? I'm all about the Brute and New England hazy style of IPA as of recent. If you're in the Great Lakes region, seek out the Brute Mellow Hello from Platform Beers and the Slurm Lord Double New England IPA from Shorts Brewing.
Anything that references Slurm, I'm in for.
Yeah.
I bought a 6-pack just because I was at like the deli down the street. The Brute IPA from Sierra Nevada,
Oh, yeah.
which it's very well distributed. It's borderline macro beer. I thought the Brute was delicious.
Cool macro beer schnars.
No, I mean Sierra Nevada. They're kind of the OG. In any event,
They've done some things. I just had the Brute from Surly and loved it. And actually, a buddy of mine gave me a 6-pack that I got for $3 at this store in Madison, and I thought it was just gonna be some skunky stuff that's been sitting around for months, but no, it was great.
it's almost weird.
And I'm a big fan of the New England IPAs and the milkshake IPAs that I've been popping around. Anybody else?
I don't like beer, so I don't have any suggestions there.
Next up from at Pittman1382. After putting popcorn in the microwave and hitting the popcorn button, how long do I wait before taking it out? I think it's at least 2 minutes.
This is a great question. It has nothing to. There's not a set amount of time. You sit there. You sit there and you listen, and then when the pops are only about when they slow down and they're like 2 seconds apart, you got to get that thing out of there right away.
Yeah. I'm with Eric. You do it all based on sound.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm a firm believer of the old school popcorn popper. I don't care for the microwave stuff.
I mean, the best way to do it is just throw it in a big pan with some olive oil and salt.
Yeah.
Put it down.
I really liked the Jiffy Pop that you could get for the stovetop.
Yeah.
But
that never didn't burn.
Yeah.
It was.
It always burned.
Do they not sell that anymore?
I can't imagine.
I mean, I've seen it once or twice in the past 10 years.
All right. I'm sorry, Snap, whatever the hell your name is. I feel bad about making fun of your hairline.
It's not
Just
great.
get that out of the way. I think he shaves. I think he shaves his head. So I think, I don't know. I assume he does that.
Yeah, me too.
As a choice because of, nobody does that when they have a full head of hair, except for that guy on Seinfeld. You remember? Elaine was dating that guy and she saw his driver's license.
Joe, you should just stop now.
Yeah. 2 more from at Matt Dibs. I've read Pet Sematary, seen the original and the remake trailer, but was still affected by the tractor trailer scene. Haven't even / gotten a daughter yet, and I felt a little queasy. Do y'all have scenes that just get to you rather than scare you?
It's still pretty effective, except did anyone else think the truck CGI looked like a 90s video game or something?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little too much. I was like, I mean, I get...
It was like Birdemic-esque, that shot of that truck.
Birdemic.
It was fine. I mean, it was super effective. I mean, those are the things, right? The anytime you have kids being killed in... It really, anyways, it's not sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like watching animals get killed in any movie, so...
Yeah.
I cannot watch I Am Sam without blubbering like an idiot. That movie just like the moment.
Are we just talking about movies that we cry over? Like,
Yeah,
what?
he said like, do you have any scenes that just bother or get to you rather than scare you? And the entire movie of I Am Sam like really gets to me.
Dude, I feel that way about half of Coco. That movie just crushes me.
See, I still haven't watched Coco because everyone's like, it's so emotional, and I'm like, I'm not ready for that.
It's very
right
good.
now.
So good though.
It's a good
just
movie.
Great.
I wouldn't call it. It's not that emotional. It's fine.
No, it's not. It's not like it's not. It's there are sad
It's a
parts.
friggin'
Like
kids
there are
movie.
parts.
Yeah.
It's not like Bambi. It's not like shooting the. You know.
Yeah,
Dumb
I have no
movie.
problem with Dan Bambi's mom getting got, but parts of
fucker,
Coco got
yeah.
to me. Yeah.
Last but not least, from our good friend Lycanthrogy, Pet Cemetery, but at least one person is entirely made of bees. Who is it?
Candyman.
Yeah,
Obviously.
I don't know. The mom? The mom made of bees?
No, the neighbor.
Yeah,
Good.
makes sense. But like, still plays the exact same role, just like
Yeah.
pulling bees, just like we're glad to have you in the neighborhood.
It's so weird.
gonna
My
bury you.
neighbor.
Sounds just like him, Joe.
It's
weird.
so weird. My neighbor's just an anthropomorphic pile of bees,
Yeah, but like super friendly and helpful.
and he doesn't even have a Maine accent.
Yeah. That's it. We're done.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
And scene.
Pet Cemetery, a real stinker.
Jesus.
Info at
Love
bloodygoodhorror.com. If you want to see a live stream of this show and help support us and keep Bloody Good Horror going, please check out patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. Some other cool things you get access to if you join us there, including our Slack, Joe. Slack, as healthy as ever. It's exciting. We haven't had an argument about weird personal habits in weeks. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
I mean, I think we're going to have an argument about who puts ketchup on macaroni.
Oh, I was going to say a grapefruit argument is probably brewing there
that
as we
too.
speak, but
Well, the problem is like I'm not at work, so I'm not just like sitting there staring at it. So next Tuesday, things will
that's
pick back
why
up,
it's
I'm sure.
that's why it's been peaceful, because you haven't been there. I get it now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't know what we're doing next week. We're not going to do Hellboy. I think we probably have some video pics kicking around.
I get a staff pick at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to do staff
CC's
picks.
staff pick.
CC's never had a staff pick before, so she's raring to go. So that's kind of the plan coming forward. John, do you know what the next theatrical thing is?
We have The Curse of La Llorona
La Llorona. We'll probably do that in
coming.
theater.
Yeah, 4/19.
Yeah.
So we're open next week, and then La Llorona.
All right. Sounds good. Well, that's going to do it for Pet Cemetery. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.
See you.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.